You are listening to the Healthy Happy Mommy Podcast, episode number 52.
You are listening to the Healthy Happy Mommy Podcast with Nikki Lee Gorovich, the faith, health, and business style podcast for Christian boss moms, so you can train from a fellow mompreneur and other experts how to run your business, raise your babies, and maintain your health, all while keeping God at the center of it all. Here's your host, organic obsessed, crazy chicken lady, and world's okayest mom, Nikki Lee Gorovich.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today I have Sandy Cooper on, and she is a author. She is a teacher for Christian women who she helps them go from like overwhelmed to feeling balanced. She teaches them the concept of life balance from a biblical perspective, which we love because, as you guys know, that is so important to me to have that biblical perspective, because the world today teaches us all about how we should be doing things society's way, but very often that's not God's way. And I love when I come across a woman who is still doing things God's way and has not succumbed to society's ways of doing everything. And so Sandy found me through my podcast or through Instagram, one of them, and reached out and, shared with me a little bit about herself. And I was so excited because I said, yes, my audience is going to love her. She is, like I said, she's an author. She has an 11-lesson Bible study entitled Finding Your Balance, which I have right here. Thank you so much for sending it to me. I love it. And she has actually been a Bible study teacher for 30 years, which is so cool. And she's been blogging to Christian women for over a decade. So she definitely is on point with what she is going to be talking about to us today. And we're going to be talking all about a lot of different things, but mostly about the comparison trap that us women can find ourselves in, especially moms who, we are caught up in social media and society's way of doing things, and we're forgetting that God has a certain plan for us specifically. And when we deviate from that and start looking at everybody else and what everyone else is doing, we often find ourselves on the wrong path, and then that creates stress, overwhelm, anxiety, and just that perfectionism that Sandy talks about in her book is so relevant to today's mom, because with the Pinterest perfect posts that everybody has to have and the Instagram filters and everything that has to be so perfect before you even start doing something, it often leads to just paralyzation, because you just are analysis paralysis. You're waiting for everything to be just right before you actually do anything. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But I am so excited to introduce you guys to Sandy. I know you're going to love her. So let me stop talking and welcome Sandy to the show. Thank you so much for coming on, Sandy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited and a little nervous, but mostly excited. So yes, thank you.
You are welcome.
Yeah.
So why don't you, I'm sure you'll be able to tell us a little bit about yourself as we go, but as you're introducing yourself to everybody, why don't you tell me what motivated you to write this book, Finding Your Balance?
Sure. As you had stated, I've been writing and blogging for a long time, a decade. And when I was born and raised in a home where we learned about God, but we weren't taught biblical teachings.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be respectful to my family.
Yeah, no, I'm in that same boat with you, so I totally get that.
So I became very serious about my walk with God, I'll put it that way, when I was 18. And immediately started teaching Bible studies at that age, which is why it's been 30 years, because I joined a campus ministry as a freshman, and immediately my brother, who was the leader of that campus ministry, handed me a Bible study and told me I needed to teach it to somebody, and I didn't know anything. And so I've been teaching the Bible ever since, and I fell in love with it. And so I got married eventually and had kids, and I have 4 children. My oldest one passed away when he was only 9 months old.
Oh.
And yes, and then I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I have a 16, almost 17-year-old son, and then I have an 11-year-old daughter, and my 2 youngest ones are adopted.
Oh, cool.
So we have just a whole array of parenting experience, dealing with the death of a child, adoption. We've had one as an international adoption, one was a local adoption. And so, with regard to finding your balance, I, I, I had just, when I became a mother, and I quit working full time and to stay home with my babies. And at that time, I was just really having a difficult time trying to figure out how to balance life with babies. I didn't understand how you get everything done and also take care of this small human. And so I was just really on a very basic level struggling with it. And so as I started diving into the Bible, because I realized that like time management books weren't helping me. It just, they gave a temporary fix, but I think I had a lot deeper issues that I was struggling with. And so I started seeking what the Word of God said. And because the Word of God does not, you can't, look up in your concordance the word balance and find, what you're looking for. I mean, you'll find stuff about scales and money, and pretty much that's it. But you aren't going to find things about, what to say to the person who wants you to volunteer for something and you don't have time, or how to get dinner on the table while your baby's crying. Like those things aren't in there. So as I started really diving into what the Word of God said, I started inviting women into my home and teaching them the little bits that I was learning along the way. And then I started blogging about it. And then I started teaching a class in my church about it. And then it just kept growing and evolving and evolving and evolving because I kept learning more. And of course, my seasons of life were also changing. So I was gathering more and more information. Sure. Yeah. And the more women I taught, then I could talk with them and find out what their experiences were. And so it just kept turning into that. So like this 20-year journey of me with little babies trying to figure out how to keep the house picked up. And I say that kind of tritely, but there were some serious things going on inside of me that motivated it. But then most recently, about 2 years ago, I had invited a group of women into our home that they're the moms of my daughter's classmates. And I taught them the most recent version of the Bible study. And they were the ones who said, you really need to just publish this. Like it is in a place now, like people need to hear this. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. So yeah, that's kind of the long version of that story, but yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like, obviously we know this, but God really does have perfect timing, and He waits till you're ready, not only to give what you know, but till you're ready to handle that responsibility, because publishing a book is a huge responsibility, and you have to be able to follow through, and then, really be able to handle the people that want to ask you questions or promoting it, or all the different things that come along with promoting a book. You don't just promote a book, especially one that talks about God, and then not do anything with it.
Right.
So I feel like I love that He just has that perfect timing, and always.
Yes, that's so good. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has your perspective about balance changed over the years? Like, how would you define balance now?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like when I used to think about balance, when I would strive for balance before, I always thought of balance like scales, like those scales that are, in fact, that's even the logo I have on my blog, which is not accurate of how I really view balance, but that's how most people think of balance. So it's cute. Yeah. But that's kind of how I tried to live my life. So on the days when I got up early and I spent time with God, and I picked up my house and I connected with a friend, and I read to my children and made a home cooked meal and connected with my husband and got a good night's sleep and worked out in the middle of all that. Those were to me, those were balance days. But, and so if anything got moved from that, it would throw the whole thing off. And in my mind, I had failed at balance that day. Like I couldn't, I'm never going to get this right. I'm never going to be balanced. And, obviously that's like an exercise in frustration and futility because of, when do you actually succeed in that? Like never.
No.
Never. Maybe one day a year I would actually do that. And so now, like over the years, part of it's probably just age and maturity, but a lot of it is also being in the Word of God and living a lot of life. I realize now that balance is much more like a pendulum. And so, it's these extremes of, sometimes it's just a day-to-day extreme. Sometimes it's just a season-to-season extreme. Sometimes, it's just that rhythm that flows back and forth that gives life its energy. And so rather than always trying to fight those extremes, like when things would just get really busy or, someone's sick and you're stuck in the house forever, or, you just have a really busy season at work, or your husband's traveling, or, something that just throws you off,
Right.
Rather than always trying to fight that, like with the scales, I now, if I view it as a pendulum, I just see myself like hopping on and riding over because it always comes back, the extreme doesn't last forever. And I've learned that now. And so I just, it's just more of a day-to-day, season-to-season pendulum than the trying to keep everything perfectly on those scales just so. And every time something else moves, you got to move all the pieces around to make it all fit. Like I stopped trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, really, I mean, and I'll just say this, and we can go on, but I'll say the definition of balance is so much more of a godly one now, because it's not so much about time management. It's more about peace. It's about peace, living out my priorities, rather than trying to fit in everything that everybody thinks I need to be fitting in my day.
Yeah. And I was going to say, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how we are so wanting to control everything as humans, especially as women. We want to control everything. Everything has to be perfect. And so if things don't fall just so in the perfect puzzle piece that we want to create for our lives that we think is right, then we find that we're failing or something's wrong or we're off balance. But what I find, and I think you would agree, is that God wants us to rely on Him and rely on His abilities to, teach us in the moment what He's trying to teach us, and to in our times of anxiety and feeling like we're not enough and we're not good enough, to run to Him and seek Him in that moment instead of trying to control a situation and fix it because we're wrong. We're supposed to go to Him and say, Father, how should I see this? Like, what are you trying to teach me in this moment? Like, why am I feeling so overwhelmed right now? And I feel like that in that way, balance would be viewed as a godly value, right?
Yes. And it definitely, and, as you were saying that, I was thinking that sometimes in that pendulum extreme, that's God doing that, and He's taking you to that extreme because He never intended for you to handle it on your own. He will lead you into situations that are too much for you to handle so that you will rely on Him solely. And you can't learn that without being into that extreme. And so, I mean, with the godly perspective, I mean, that's when I really start realizing, now, wait a minute, like a lot of the reason why so many women think balance is a myth or they've given up or, whatever, is because they don't realize that balance is really peace to live out the things that God is telling you to live out. And so, when the Pharisees approached Jesus and asked Him, what is the greatest commandment? He said, to love the Lord your God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And on these hang all the law and the prophets. And so for us, the way I interpret that as balance is, okay, if I love God with my whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and I love my people, all the people he has put into my life, that everything else in my life falls into place. All
Yeah.
the law and the prophets hang on that. Everything that Sandy's trying to get done hangs on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it becomes, the piece to live out those priorities, which are to love God and love my people, and then to do it with freedom that Christ has given me. So
Mm-hmm.
the only way I can really operate in that freedom then is to make sure that I know what my gifts and talents are, and that I'm using those, that I'm stewarding those well. And that opens up the whole door of like all the things that I then shouldn't be doing, because
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes a very focused, godly value of balance is peace to live out what God has told me to do through freedom in Christ. And I
Amen.
spend, I mean, really, that is it in a nutshell. And so,
That's so good. And
yeah,
that like really speaks to me too, because, I'm 33. So I'm like
mm-hmm.
where you were when you were still going crazy. Like as I was reading your
Yes,
book and, you were talking about your past stories and stuff, I was like, that's
yeah,
me now.
yeah,
And it is. It's like me
yeah,
now. Like I'm like, oh
yeah,
girl, that is me 100%.
right,
like,
right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, this is definitely speaking to me right exactly in this moment. And I
that's
do
awesome.
find that I know better, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
always do better because
Yeah,
I want to control everything. I want to control the situation.
yeah,
And what you were talking about with, loving God first, putting him
mm-hmm.
first, then everything else falls into place. I know that.
Sure,
I do. Of course I do.
right,
Because
sure,
I know Jesus and I know what he told me, and I know I've been in that place in my life before where I am putting God first and everything else is falling into place. So I know from
yeah,
experience that it works. But I will be honest with you, as a
mm-hmm.
young mom
Mm-hmm.
and somebody who works full time and has a business and tries
Mm-hmm.
to work out and tries to keep the family fed and healthy and clean and all the other things,
Yep.
I don't always put God first. And that is my problem. And that is a lot of the problem of most people,
Mm-hmm.
that we know we're supposed to put God first and
Right.
we want to, but in our control freak natures, we
Yes.
think all the other things on our to-do list have to come before God. And
Right.
when I do that, when I'm living in that place, I am a mess. All my
Right.
stuff is completely all over the place. I am pulled in every direction and I do
Yep.
not feel peace and I do not feel balance and I do not feel any of those things. So
Yep. Yep.
everything you're saying is 100% true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would just be completely like not being honest if I didn't say that that is a huge struggle for me. And I'm sure it's a huge struggle for many, many moms out there. We want to
Yes.
do the right thing, but it's like, but
Yeah.
the kids are screaming and they
Yeah.
need food and the laundry's piled up, and how am I supposed to peacefully seek after God every morning when my toddler's crying and threw up
Mhm.
in my, in the bedroom again? It's like,
Right. 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 Totally. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what
What
would you say are like some of those challenges? I mean, I'm sure I just hit on a bunch of them, but
you
what are
did.
some other ones that, maybe are faced, that women are being faced with, that are making it hard for them to find that balance?
Well, I think today's woman, I mean, obviously women have always had challenges. So, I've only lived in this generation, so I don't really know, what it's like to live 100 years ago. But I will say that I think today's woman has more and very unique challenges than women even a generation or two ago. One, I tend to pick on social media a
Oh,
lot. I'm
yes.
on social media. I like social media. But I pick on it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to balance, because
Mm-hmm.
technology, it has a very addictive nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to be, it's
Mm-hmm.
not our fault. We don't need to feel guilty if we're drawn to it, because that's how, people work full time in order to make it that way.
Yeah.
So, they're doing a very good job.
Yeah, they sure are.
Yes, they are. And not only the addictive nature of it, but just the time suck.
Yeah.
I think that 50 years ago, I will say that when I started studying this information 20 years ago, I had a phone that was, it was like in my car, like mounted
Yeah.
in my car.
Yeah.
That was my cell phone.
Yeah.
Like I didn't carry it with me everywhere. It was the phone I could use in an emergency.
Right.
If I was driving and got stranded, or, stuck in
Yeah.
traffic and I wanted to check my email messages on my answering machine in my house,
Right.
I could use that
Right.
phone. So, today's woman, including myself, has this immense thing. Like, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it just keeps getting more and more prevalent. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, I mean, it's changed so much even in the last 5 years. I mean, it just keeps getting more and more, where everything that you need is on this little device. And I
I
think
know.
that is definitely unique to today's woman, that they didn't have. And I think coupled with that, 100 years ago, or even a generation ago, I'm thinking about my parents, they lived in very close proximity to their family.
Yeah.
People didn't move. Your church family was your school family, was your neighbors, was your family. And
Mm-hmm.
so there was just a connectedness that was
Mm-hmm.
there that we don't have right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are blessed with that. I'm always very jealous in the best way of people
Yeah.
who have that. I live away from my family and I've never had that, but I think that that's another very unique challenge that really messes with our balance that we don't think about, because I think there was just a support and a certain level of, you already know people, you have an innate structure already built in for people who teach you things, who help you
Mm-hmm.
with things, where now we just don't have any of that. And
Right.
so I think that is also a really big challenge for, women today, that just wasn't even, plus all the things that you said. Like,
Yeah.
so then you add that to all what you said, and then it's like, no wonder everybody struggles, or they think that it's fake.
Right.
Like, balance is a myth. I hear so many women, even prominent Christian women,
Yeah.
say balance is a myth. And I'm like, no,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't, like that. That's not, I don't think that that's true. I mean, obviously I don't, because I've devoted my whole ministry to it. So, but I don't
I
think
think the
that's,
only time that balance would be viewed as a myth, and where people might be getting it wrong, is when you think that you're in charge of balance. When
yes,
you think that it's your job to become balanced, then
yes,
yes, that is a myth, because you can never balance
right,
yourself, but God can balance us. And through seeking
yes,
Him, He makes us balance. But yeah, for the most part, everyone thinks that it's their own job to balance out every little thing. So it's easier to just say, I can't do it.
yes,
It's much
that is
easier
true.
to just throw in the towel and say, nope,
Just
can't
go, I
do it.
can't.
Because if I take away my responsibility, then I'm not guilty. So
Yep.
it's, if you just say, nope, I'm washing my hands of this, it won't happen. I'll never do this.
Yeah.
Just like any goal you set, oh, I'll never get that. I'll never look like that. I'll never lose 10 pounds. If you remove yourself from the responsibility of having to do it, then you're not guilty of not trying. So it's
Right.
like, oh, I'll never get balanced. Well, no. If you're doing it in your own strength, yes, but not if you're like learning how to trust God about it. And honestly, like, I'll tell you, before reading your book and talking with you, I never even thought about it this way. So I'm very thankful that you just popped into my life like this, because it is helping me a lot. And I know it's going to help so many people, because it's not something that people are really talking about.
Right. I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, I know that you talk about 4 different hurdles in the book, hurdles, like the biggest hurdles to being balanced, perfectionism, comparison, people pleasing, and busyness.
Yes.
Those are really like,
4.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to get this book so they can read all 4 of them. But for the interest of time, we're going to talk about comparison, and we could touch on perfectionism a little bit, just because it's got it. You can't skip over perfectionism, because it's just too hard. It's too hard of a thing. Like, I feel like there's so many people now, like you said, with social media, the comparison thing and the perfectionism thing. Oh my gosh. It's bad. It's bad. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. You will be feeling so good about yourself, until you log on to Instagram or Facebook. And then you're
True.
like, well,
I stink.
why do I even bother trying?
Exactly. It's so true.
Yeah,
I
you're like,
know.
well, I was having a really good day till I saw so-and-so doing this way better than I ever could. And now I just totally stink at everything that I ever tried doing.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, okay. So comparison first. What do you think is at the root of comparison?
Well, I don't know if people want to hear this, but I'm just going to be straight.
Do it.
So yes, the root of comparison is fear and pride. So, and I will venture to say that really everything apart from Christ, like everything that separates us from him and from doing what is pleasing to him, is rooted in the very base level of it, at fear and pride. So, and this comes like I kept stumbling upon this as I was studying. I was not expecting, like, I didn't go looking for fear and pride and find comparison. I actually would think, okay, why am I see all of those four things? Those were like, I am a recovering every one of those things. Yeah. So I feel like the Lord led me to just keep showing me, Sandy, the root of this is fear again. The root of this is pride again. And so, in particular with comparison, it's fear that, that you're going to miss something, that you're not measuring up. Whenever we compare ourselves to other people, the Bible says that's unwise. Okay. So we compare ourselves and we'll either think we're greater than or we're less than them. And so the greater than part, that's the pride, and the less than part, that's the fear. And so, when we look at people and we decide, well, at least I'm not that, that's just as sinful as walking away from your Instagram and feeling like you stink. Walking away from your Instagram and feeling like, wow, I guess I really am. I mean, my house is nicer than hers, and I'm skinnier than her, and she hasn't aged well. And, whenever you're thinking any of that, like, the root of that is pride. And the root, and, so we really do need to deal with this on a spiritual level. I mean, there are some practical things you can do to just putting things away and not looking at certain things, and but that's even spiritual, like, because the Bible tells us to do that, to be very careful what we put before our eyes. And so, when you realize what a spiritual component is at the root, then you know that you can deal with it in a spiritual way and really take care of it, like really eradicate it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read that. I was looking through that exact chapter earlier this afternoon, and I saw that you said that, how it's like the greater than and less than, and it's both of them are sin. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. Mind blown. Like, I didn't see it like that. I didn't think about it like that. I really didn't. And I was like, holy moly, you're right. And it really did open my eyes to the fact that none of us are good enough. And it just really makes me so thankful for grace, because no way would any of us ever even come close to being good enough. And that's why it sometimes stops me dead in my tracks, and it just makes me want to just fall on my face and just like cry and be like, thank you, Jesus, for forgiving me, because I am so sinful. I am so not close to good. Right. And, none of us can say that, but it's so tempting, and it's so enticing to sit there and say, well, look at me, I'm so great, or I'm so much better, or I'm not good enough. I will never be good enough. I will not even ever come close to that. And I do get, I get this, little nudge in my spirit whenever I ever think like that. I do feel like God nudging me, saying, like, you're hurting me when you say that, because I created you perfectly, and I created you the way that I wanted you to be. And you saying you're not good enough is like telling me that my creation's not good enough. And I do always get that. Yes. But I just I toss it over my shoulder. I say, no, I know better than you, God, of course. I still feel bad because I know what I'm talking about, and it's like, it's a trap. Yeah. That's why it's called a trap, a comparison trap, because it is a trap. It's the enemy wanting to trick you into believing something and
Yes.
he says, oh, look, believe this, believe this, believe this. And once you
Mhm.
believe it, then he says, you're so stupid. Why would you believe that? You're an
That's
idiot.
exactly right.
And he makes that sin sound so good until you sin. And then he's like, you're never going to be forgiven of this now.
Yes.
Now you're stuck.
Yes. It's like he tempts and lures and then he condemns you for falling for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Every time.
Yes. Yes. Every time.
Every time.
And it's just a huge distraction too. I mean, that if he can just keep you distracted from the thing that God has told you to do. So like coming back to the center of, how is God telling you to love him with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength? And how is he telling you to love the people around you?
Yeah.
And what are the gifts that are unique to you, and how are you using them to further the kingdom? And so like, how are you doing that? And then if Satan can just keep you distracted, just like a degree away, and you'll just never be focused on what God has told you to do. And that's why why we always feel so off balance. It's because like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And sometimes it's just a little course correction of like putting our eyes back on what God told us to put our eyes on, and not to look around at what everybody else is doing all the time. So, and I don't know any woman, anyone that I have ever talked to about this who does not struggle with comparison.
Right.
Not everyone struggles with perfectionism. Not everyone struggles with people pleasing. Some people are better at busyness and some people are not. But with comparison, I've never met a woman who doesn't struggle with this on some level. Like, it's just...
I think it's because, the enemy knows like that us women are created in this certain way. And he like, uses that weakness in all of us to kind of pit us against each other almost.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely think that's what's happening.
It's crazy. And, with summer happening right now, I bet it's even worse with the whole distraction thing because, you're on your game for the most part when the kids are in school because you have a good, balance of like things that you're doing. Balance in quotes because you think you're doing well all school year. It's like, hurry up kids, hurry up kids, hurry up kids. Let's go. Shove the food down your throat. Let's go. And, but then when summer comes, all bets are off because God forbid you actually have a business to run in the summer.
Right.
Or like things you have to do.
Right.
It's like,
I mean, you should have seen me trying to get my family out of the house for this.
Me too.
I'm like, you have to eat. You have to like clean up the kitchen. John, I told you I needed the kids out of the house at 8. Like, get out. I know, balance.
Me too. My husband and son are in the other room watching a movie, and like as you were talking, I had to mute myself, and I texted my husband. I'm like, turn the movie down because it's too loud.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's so funny.
So it's like, this is real life, but
it's real life. That's right. Well, and we're not striving for perfection, so we're all okay with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. Yes.
So what would be something that you would say is a tip for escaping the comparison trap if there was such a thing?
Yes. Well, there is such a thing. And that's why I feel like I have so much hope that I have discovered that I can now offer other women, because I've discovered how to overcome these things. I still struggle because it never goes away because the temptations are always there. But my number one tip that I would say hands down would be gratitude, because gratitude and jealousy cannot exist together. They just can't. And so when you are genuinely thankful for the things that God has given you, all of a sudden it totally disarms that eye to covet what other people have, to be jealous, even to puff yourself up. Because when you realize that it comes from the hand of God, that it's not anything that you deserve, then even the temptation to be prideful about what you have is suddenly diffused. So it's diffused either way. And then I would say, if I could give 2 tips, because there's 2 things that I have found for me are absolutely like decimate the comparison trap. So it's gratitude coupled with learning to champion other women.
Yes.
Like letting that just be your go-to response.
Yes.
That when you learn to just speak life into other women, and even in your head, like when that person gets the promotion and when that person gets the book contract and when that person loses her 10 pounds and when that person has the, husband who is doting on her and that person has the child who isn't chronically ill and that, whatever. Like that when you just learn to say, I am so happy for you. What can I do to like encourage you? What can, like just learning to speak those words inside your own mind about other women, coupled with being thankful that God has given you everything that you have comes from him.
Yes.
That those two things, like the comparison trap can't exist. Like it totally eliminates it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's hard to keep those things in the forefront of your mind. So in all fairness, like I don't say it like, oh wow, so I'm totally over I mean, I have to remind myself all the time too, like, wait a minute. Why am I feeling yuck inside when I saw that? And then I have to remember, okay, wait, because I wasn't championing her. I wasn't trying to cheer her on about her accomplishments. I was jealous and I wasn't thankful. And so, yeah, I'm constantly a work in progress on it too. But those two things together, I feel like those are the keys.
I love that. And I also would say that when you're grateful, and I've done this for like my clients and stuff about getting them healthy. When you practice gratitude, stress can't live in the body either. So stress,
that's so good.
Yeah, stress and anxiety can't live in the same place as gratitude lives. And, stress goes right along with comparison, perfectionism, all the other things.
So
it's stress.
Yep.
And chronic stress leads to illness. It leads to weight gain. People can't lose weight because the fat literally sits on their body if they're overstressed. Can't sleep properly. All kinds of stuff goes wrong when you're overstressed. So just practicing gratitude alone will lower the stress in your body, lowers that cortisol level, and everything starts to feel better. So I would completely agree with you on that one. Gratitude is
so good.
And gratitude, I feel like society has put like this woo-woo concept on gratitude. It's like, oh, just practice gratitude, man, and everything's good. It's like, come on, people. You don't need to make it weird.
That.
It's just be thankful for what you have.
Thankful,
come on now.
Right. And also being thankful, I think the key component is being thankful to God.
Well, right.
Because a lot of people are just like, be thankful.
Right.
Well, okay, but
like who?
And who gave this to me? Like understanding that it comes from God's hand.
Yes.
And that it is his love for us, that he's lavishing all of this onto us when we don't deserve it. It really does change your posture. It's not just the trendy gratitude journal or whatever. Like make sure you write down what you're thankful for. I mean, and I love that. I think it's a step in the right direction. I don't mean to like criticize that, but I also I feel like while I did all of that stuff, I still felt yuck inside and I couldn't figure out. And that's when I realized that it really was so much more of a spiritual component.
Right.
And that's what I appreciate even just the way you talk about things on the podcast is that you are so open about talking openly about God and Christ and all of that, because sometimes when you talk about balance and when I talk about the book, I have to kind of back off some of that, which is hard to do when you're doing a Bible study because, it's like, I don't really have anything to offer you apart from God. Like, I really don't. I mean, I could give you a couple tips. Yeah. But honestly, if you're not in a relationship with Christ, I don't know how to tell you to have peace. I don't, because I wouldn't be like, that's my source of peace.
Sure.
So I love that you are not afraid to say that.
Yeah. And I mean, I truly believe, I know in today's society, it's hard to stand up for Jesus a lot of the time when everybody else is doing other things that are cool and trendy and stuff. Yeah. But when you have felt him, you can't deny it. If you truly felt him and you truly know him and he's there, you can't deny him. And you don't really care what people think. And I don't care. I don't care. I will not. Like if you don't like me, don't listen to my podcast.
That's right. You get what you pay for, right?
I mean, see ya.
Right. I know exactly. I so agree. I
only have to answer to him, so I'm not worried about it. He's the one that I want to answer to, and if he's proud of me, that's all I care about.
That's right.
And he eventually will bring the people that I need to meet and need to be in my life, and he will get rid of the ones that don't. So I'm cool
Yes.
with it.
Yep. I love it.
Oh, I love it too. I'm like, I'm so thankful I met you, honestly. Like,
Aw.
you're giving me like the best feeling right now. Like,
Yay.
seriously, I'm so
Well,
thankful.
Well, I wanted to go back and say, when you started talking about all the, your clients and all the fitness
Yeah.
stuff, I'm like the biggest health nut, and that's how
Yeah.
I found you originally.
Oh, okay.
And so we have to come back and have another conversation, because
Yes.
because I just want to I want to talk about food, and I want to talk about exercise.
Yeah.
I want to talk about all that too, but this is more
Yeah.
important. We'll do this first. But
Yeah. Well, we can have like a part 2.
we need to have a part 2. I'll
Yeah.
just come back another time, or we could just talk on the phone. Either
Well,
way.
that too.
We
I
could
have
do
a feeling
both.
we're going to be friends now. So
I
I'm
think
excited
so
about
too.
this.
Me too. I love it.
Cool.
Oh, that's great.
All right. So as we like kind of wrap up and stuff, what would you
Yep.
recommend to the working mom with children and a husband and the house and all the other stuff?
Yes.
What would you recommend to her to help her find balance?
Yes, that is such a great question. So I am one of those women.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, first of all, I just want to say to every working mom out there, you're a superhero. Like I'm just like in awe of every woman who's able to do that and raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a single mom and you are working outside the home and you have children, I'm just like, I just want to like,
Yeah.
worship at your feet. Not
Yeah.
really worship you,
Yeah.
but just all the encouragement to you, because that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I will say, all of those things combined is really so much. And parenting in and of itself, just by itself, is so much. So you add that, a full-time job, and it just can become crazy town. So I would say to the person who is balancing those two, trying to balance those two big giant things in the same season, is to really, you need to have like a come to Jesus meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and with yourself and Jesus, and really determine what your priorities are for that season, because you aren't supposed to do everything every season all the time. Okay, so some things, there may be you may have true genuine giftings in you, on you, calling on your life, you've known it since you were little, whatever. That might not be the season to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be the season to cook homemade meals. I love to cook,
Mm-hmm.
but you know what? Sometimes I couldn't do that.
Right.
It might not be the season to, have a lot of outside extracurricular activities. It might be the season that you're home more. It might not be the season for your husband to take, that great new job opportunity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you really need to sit down with God and your family and determine what your priorities are, because everybody's different. Everybody's in a different season, and it changes always. I also think that this is a very practical tip, but I think it is so vital for working moms to get help,
Mm-hmm.
and help in whatever form or fashion it works for you. So if you can afford to hire people to do the things that you can't, there are some things that only you can do, right? I mean,
Right.
you're the only one who can really instill the values into your children that you want to instill. You're the only one who can truly love your husband, or you should be the only one who's loving him. That's right. Exactly. So aside from those two things, like being their mom and being his wife, everything else is up for delegation. So if you can hire it out and you can afford to do that, that might be an option. If your kids, and I'm a big fan, I think I heard one of your podcasts about kids and chores. But I'm a big fan of giving kids chores from the earliest possible age. I mean, my kids do so much around the house at the ages they are now. And we don't have a big fight about it, because it's been their life since right. It's just the way it's always been. But that was a lot of hard work. I'm not saying it like happened like that. And I don't have super compliant kids or anything. It's part of what we had to do to maintain our balance in our house. So I would, definitely figure out your priorities and delegate and get help with as much as you possibly can, so that you can just focus on those things only you can do.
Right.
And only you know what those things are. You know what I mean? So, you're the only one who really knows.
And like you said in the beginning, when you're putting God first, then everything else falls into place. And my husband and I recently went on a marriage retreat, and we found that and again, we're young. So, I mean, we're married 7 years. So, I mean, it's still kind of like,
congratulations though.
thanks.
That's awesome.
But it's like nothing compared to like, your relationship and stuff where you've been through
Yeah.
so much, we're
Yeah.
still kind of like on the earlier side of things. And, we learned really valuable tip is that like, you need to put God first, then your spouse, then your kids, and everything else is behind that and not important. And not that it's not important, but the other things need to take precedence. And I feel like nowadays it's really what it is usually the kids' curricular activities, work.
It's first.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Work.
Right.
Random chore, not even chores, but like the have to, then eating, because eating is not even a priority. That's why people drive through the fast food line all the time, because they don't prioritize their meals because they don't have time. And then maybe if you're lucky, your spouse gets a little bit of your energy at the end of the night, but mostly it's not that. And then God gets what, an hour on Sunday?
Right.
If that. And that's what people are doing nowadays. And that's why everybody's out of balance and off and all going nuts, because they're not prioritizing in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, I'm guilty too, but I'm just saying, at least I know, so that when I feel myself going off the crazy town train and I'm like, ooh, reel it back in, girlfriend, like you are a little bit going nuts here, and I know, and I can identify that in myself, but so many people don't even know why they don't feel right.
Right. That's so true. And, and I think it's really very confusing for a lot of people on what they should be prioritizing, because just when you feel like you've got it down, like, okay, I know this is my priority. These are my order of priorities. But then as soon as you look at somebody else and you see them doing something, especially if it's in something that you're really gifted in, and they're excelling in it, and it's so attractive to just be like, oh, and I need to do that. And of course, then as soon as the enemy knows that that's distracting to you, he will make sure that every single person who is excelling in that thing is brought before your eyes. And then pretty soon you're spending so much time on, I'll just check this out. I'm just going to check out the website. I'm just going to look at what the opportunity is. I'm just going to, and before you know it, you have devoted hours and hours to something. And again, like you said, something very vital, like spending time with your spouse or spending time in prayer or, making time for your children, is gone. The time is just gone. And, and I'll pick on social media again. I would say if there's like another thing that I would highly advise women who are trying to juggle everything is to stay off your phone. Like, stay off your phone. And I'm talking to me too. It's so hard. Too. Everything's there. Like everything I need in my whole life is on my phone. And so to set it aside is hard.
Yeah. And it's constantly dinging and dinging and dinging. I mean, I set off my notifications. My notifications are off, but I still, like you said, it's addictive because you do get that dopamine hit when you check your phone. And the brain sends that signal of pleasure every single time you check your phone. So it is an addiction. And it truly is. And it's becoming like an epidemic, and the kids are addicted to their screens and stuff. And none of us are safe, and we do have to be mindful of it. And I know for me, a lot of struggle that I have with just like, getting distracted on things and like, using social media to kind of like look and see what everyone else is doing, and like using something that's good and turning it into something bad because you get too much deep into it is fitness, because there's so much out there about fitness and all these girls on Instagram that look so great. Because of the lighting and the photoshopping and the editing. And number one, they don't have kids, so they can spend hours in the gym and they can eat whatever they want, and they don't have to worry about, other lives. It's just them. And then I compare myself to them and say, oh, I'm not as fit as her, or I don't have the same body that she does. And meanwhile, then I'm like stuck in this scroll of pictures of some person I don't even know. And her life is not even close to the same life as mine. And I'm like, what am I doing? I just lost an hour of my time scrolling up through somebody's pictures that doesn't even matter to me, when I have a perfectly fine, fit, healthy body. I take care of myself. What am I doing? Like, what is my problem? And you've listened to my show, so I don't sugarcoat and I don't hide. Like, this is me, and I am honest. Like, that is a struggle for me. And it's a struggle for a lot of women when they think they're doing good. They think they're looking nice and looking good. Oh, I lost 10 pounds. I feel great.
Mm-hmm.
They pop on Instagram and they see that somebody else looks way better than them. And they're like, oh, I look terrible.
Right.
And it's just
It's
not
so
fair.
true.
It stinks.
It isn't. Well, and I would even say, you know, as you were saying all that, it made me think that one of the main problems that social media does, that it contributes to balance, especially with moms who are already juggling all this stuff. Okay, so you have working mom, job, family, her home, everything she's trying to juggle. And then if you add, she starts scrolling through social media and she's looking at, you know, she might see 10 different women. And in her mind, even though she's trying to, you know, just get on, get off and just champion the women and do all those things, but in her mind, she's thinking, oh, look, she grows her own vegetables. And oh, look, she just got new curtains. And oh, look, you know, they just went on a really nice vacation. And oh, look, their kids are involved in soccer. And then she gets off and all of a sudden she's in her mind, and I do this, is I will morph all of those women. It was 6 women or 10 women, but in my mind, it's one woman who's growing vegetables, who's, you know, doing, you know, the Maui vacation and the kids and soccer. And I morphed it into one person and I compare myself to that, like this fake person. Like, it's not even an actual human anymore. Now it's just some conglomeration of all the people in my feed. And I'm like, and then I wonder why I walk away feeling like, wow, I really stink. Like, why can't I keep up with everyone?
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, wait, like that isn't even in anyone. That's not even real.
I know. And you know that quote, I think Stephen Furtick said it first, but, you know, we are comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not even real life. People's highlight reel is not real life. Like, I've had people tell me that I'm goals for them. And I'm like, oh girl,
please.
I wish you could see my life. I am not goals for you. Like, I appreciate that you're inspired by me, but girlfriend, trust me when I say I'm just as messy as you. I'm just as a hot mess as you. I do not have it all together. Absolutely not. I have insecurities. I have struggles. I have issues. There's nothing that I would say, oh, you should be like me, because that when I see people do that, I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't let somebody else be goals for you. Yes, you should use other people as inspiration. But not to look at and basically idolize over and say, I want to be her. I want to be like her. She's so great. And that's what social media does. Like, these girls like click onto, you know, these perfect Instagram model people. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so perfect. I want to be you. And it's terrible, because these young girls, and even people my age, but young girls, you know, their teens and early 20s that are seeing this, they're never going to think they're good enough. Because they're growing up with this. This is their
this is reality for them.
Yeah.
This is the wholeness of their reality.
Yeah, and it'll never be. It'll never be.
No. And I would even say that, you know, not only, I feel like we've taken it a step further from someone's highlight reel to our, you know, behind the scenes, is we take all the highlight reels. This is like ESPN, where they show like I don't know what the name of that show is, but like where they show all the best shots, like in succession.
Yes.
We take that, like we'll take everyone's highlight reel and morph it.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, and who, it's absolutely ridiculous what we do to ourselves. And so as much as you can, you know, learn to live apart from that. And, you know, somehow we're all trying to figure it out. You know, it's only 10 minutes old in the light of eternity. You know what I mean? Like it's so young. No one really knows what we're doing. Like, we're all scrambling together, trying to figure out how to handle it. But I would say it seems like right now the best thing to do is to try to live in such a way that you take regular breaks, that you don't rely on it solely, you know, and it's so hard for me. I have a 19-year-old who lives in an apartment.
Oh, geez.
And so I'm like, how do I ever turn off my phone? Never. Like, I can never turn it off. I can never walk away from it, because I can tell you she's already been in accidents. She's already like needed me in a crisis, like an emotional crisis. And so I can't I feel like I
Yeah.
can't turn it off. And I'm about to have my next one start driving like this week.
Oof.
And so like,
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to do that part, but I know that when I can turn it off, I should try. Like,
Right.
or I should try to like turn off all the notifications, but maybe for my kids in an emergency kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was going to ask you, what would be something that you would say to us moms to like kind of reevaluate and achieve that balance? Like what maybe some small kind of little things could we do to make sure we're putting God first, that we're not sucked into our phones? I mean, I
Right.
guess an accountability partner would be good, but it's like,
But not a lot of
that
people,
doesn't
yeah,
last usually.
right. And you know what? A lot of people don't thrive with accountability partners. Like
Yeah.
I'm a person who doesn't like that. Like
Yeah, I
I
don't really
almost feel,
either. But
yeah. So
that's
I,
like such a popular thing to
it
do. So
is.
it's like, what
So
what do we do?
right. What do we do? Get an accountability partner.
Yeah.
I really think that, I think again, it comes back to, you have to cling to God. Like you
Hmm.
have to seek God and find out what your priorities are. And so that you can learn what it is that you're supposed to say no to. I think, and
Hmm.
I spend a lot of time in the book talking about how to know what to say no to, because never in the history of the world have we been faced with so many choices
I know.
and so much information coming at us at the same time. Like we just have, so it's not even choices anymore. It feels like an assault. It feels like an assault on who, like, it's so hard to just settle in on and be like for longer than a day to decide, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am.
Oh
This
my
is what
gosh, you're
I'm
so
not
right.
doing.
Yeah.
It's like, and then as soon as you feel like you get to that point, then you walk out into whatever, you pick up your phone, you go drive somewhere, and it's 10,000 things hitting you going, what about this? What about this? What about
Yep.
this? And so I think for women, learning to constantly be going back to God and asking, is this my priority? And then learning to, and there's a lot in the book about this. I mean, we go into a lot of things through scripture because it's so hard. It's easy to just say you should do this, but I
Hmm.
mean, unless you have the strength of the spirit behind you and the
Hmm.
word to understand why and all that, but to have the backbone to learn to say no to people and things that are not for you right now, even good things. Like
Hmm.
I know a lot of women who just can't say no to anything
Hmm.
because it's all good, and they get very confused, and they're like, but it's good, but it's, I love this, but there are some times where you just like, things you love and things that are good are not for right now, because
Hmm.
if you want to live peacefully in Christ, in freedom, balanced,
Hmm.
it really does require as much knowing what not to do as it is knowing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Lisa Turkers talks about that in her book, The Best Yes, I
The best,
think.
yes,
She
yes, she
talks a
does
lot
talk about
about
that.
like, and she gives like practical examples of like how to politely decline something
Yes,
and like not make it sound like you're saying no, but you're saying, I would love to do this for you, but I can't, blah, 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 but then she says, sometimes I just say no. I just
yes,
flat out say no. And that's
yes,
okay. She said,
yes,
nobody's going to die. If anything, they'll respect you more
yes,
for sticking up for yourself and saying, you know what, I can't do it. No.
yep,
And then people will be like, oh, okay. Actually,
okay,
that's cool.
right,
But it empowers other people to make it okay to say no too when you say no.
yes,
Because if you say no to somebody, then they're like, oh, wow, people are saying no still. Like you could do that. It's okay
yeah,
to say no. Nobody's going to die if I say
right.
no to something. It's
I
fine,
think I think that's been one of my favorite things about this journey of balance and teaching it to so many women is watching them feel the freedom then
Yeah.
to live out their priorities. Like that same thing, just like watching them go, "Oh wow, like I can really not be like living super busy all the time, or I
Mm-hmm.
can really say no, or I can really." I mean, and a lot of people know that they can say no to their friend who wants them to volunteer for something, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you say no to your mother-in-law? Or how do you
Mm-hmm.
say no? Sometimes like, what do you do when your husband is the one who's like
Mm-hmm.
wanting you to go at that
Mm-hmm.
faster pace, which is the case in my house. Like my
Mm-hmm.
husband moves at a much faster pace than I do. And so it has taken a whole different skill set because I'm not just going to say no to my husband. So then I have to step back and go, okay, well, I can't keep up with him and do the things that I feel like I should be doing. So now what? And then that requires like another whole level of conversation with him and another level of prayer with God. Like, who do I honor here? Like, what do I, because, it gets very messy and very, and when your kids start asking and when they start getting old enough and you don't want to, you see their gifts starting to emerge and realizing that that's part of your calling as a mother to equip and empower them and their gifts. But that requires time and so then you're like, well, then what about this and this? And so it's a constant, it is so much. And I don't want to do this like it's a juggling act. It's a constant going back to your knees, going back to the word, going back to the center where you are asking God again, like, okay, God, and sometimes that's me every day. Sometimes that's me every day, like in succession, just like, I'm still not sure. Like, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm feeling a little frazzled. What do I do?
Yeah.
And what am I like? I'll lay it all out. Like sometimes I'll actually write everything out. And I take people through an exercise in the book where they do that, but I actually do that like in my journal, where I will write out every single thing that I feel is pulling on me and it all feels important. And I will say, God, just show me what I'm supposed to not do, because I can't figure it out. It all seems too much for me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I'm sure there's other people in the situation that I'm about to describe, but as you might know, I'm a stepmother. And so that is a whole different host of responsibilities, because I have another family member that has a say in what we do.
Yes.
So that creates a whole different thing, because it's like we have obligations to do things that we didn't even say we wanted to do.
Right.
And so
right.
my husband and I are constantly going back and forth about, well, we in our house don't choose to sign up for 6,000 extracurricular activities because we don't want to have to run all over the place.
Right.
But I can imagine from experience that there might be some family members who decide that they want to do that. And then all of a sudden you're roped into that situation without even asking for it. So that for me is a huge struggle and something that God really is working on me with. And I've been reminded of the season that I'm in. Like you said, I'm in a season where my kids are little and I am in this, and there's nothing that I can, like, that has to be a priority, because parenting is the third priority in it's God, spouse, kids. They're the kids too. They're my kids too. And so I have to make them and their curricular activities a priority, even if I didn't sign them up for them. And even if I didn't choose to sign them up. So that for me is a big struggle. I'm sure other moms that are listening that are having that same struggle are probably thinking that, like, oh, yeah. And it's tempting to become bitter. It's tempting to become resentful of the other party and what they decided to do that you didn't agree to or ask for. And it's a struggle. But again, I feel like God is giving us in that moment the ability to see things differently and to learn things through a different situation. And I'm only saying this now because I'm feeling good about our conversation, but I normally am not that calm about it. I normally like, what now? What is he doing now? Like, I'm not normally this like, graceful.
You're
about
so
chill. It ain't like that usually. I'm usually like, now what are we doing?
Oh,
but,
that's so funny.
But I do believe, obviously, God is not sleeping on this. He knows what's going on, and he has me here for a reason. And we have to trust him. We have to choose to trust the situation that he has us in. We have to choose every day to say, okay, God, I know these are my priorities. It's you, it's my spouse, and then it's my kids.
Right.
Everything else comes after. So if I have to go to 11,000 baseball games this week and 42 different dance competitions this week, and I don't get anything else done, I guess that's okay, because you told me my priorities are my kids too. So we have to have peace in that situation.
Yes. Well, and I will say, to be very vigilant about controlling then those things that you can control, because you can control, of course, how much time you spend on social media, for example. You can control what time you get up and what time you go to bed at night, so you can control. I know that you're very health conscious, but like I have found that just taking good care of my body gives me such a good base for then handling all that extra stress that I didn't ask for, and I didn't choose that. Right. But most of all, I can choose, and you can choose your response to those things, and I think it was Rick Warren in The Purpose Driven Life talked about that God is more concerned about our character than he is about the details of, those kinds of things. Because I'm like you, and I can get very caught up in but I don't want to do this thing. I want to do this thing, or I want to do no thing. I want to do, but I just had this conversation with God today, and I was, putting all my stuff before him and felt him say to me, I am so much more concerned about who you turn out to be, Sandy. I am so much more concerned about molding you into my character, into my image, and working those things out of you that are not like me. Like, I'm so much more concerned with that. So just focus on that. Like, who am I? Like that graceful response that you just gave, like, how, God, show me how to do that all the time. Show me how to love, the co-parents. Show me how to love these kids in a way that will have an eternal, that has eternal value, and how to, what will last. Like, ask God, like in the currency of eternity, what lasts here? Like, what matters? And that's where we can get down to the real base of it. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, wait, this is not so much about my calendar. This is about my character.
Wow, that's good. That's really good, actually. You're speaking to me real deep right now.
I should just drop the mic and end it with that, because I don't even know where that came from. Mic drop. She's done.
We're recording, because we have to go back and listen to that and maybe write it down. Maybe you need to make like a meme of that and post it.
I do. Maybe somebody already did and I didn't make it up. I hope I made it up. I don't know, but I'm not sure. I probably saw it on social media.
Probably.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I did. Okay.
No. I think you made it up. I think that was a God moment for sure.
Okay. Yes. Let's go with that.
I'll give it to you. I'm going to give it to you.
Thanks.
No problem.
Oh, it's funny.
Oh my gosh, Sandy. I love talking to you so much. Seriously,
me too.
what a good conversation. And I know that the people listening right now are like praise hands all over the place, because there's a lot in this conversation that I want to go back and listen to this and really write some stuff down and take notes and really live out this thing, because we are, like you said, we're pulled in all the directions. Everything's vying for our attention, but there's only a certain amount of things that really matter. And when we put God first, everything else really does fall into place. And it's all really about just putting that as the first thing. And it's not rocket science. It just takes diligence and it takes effort. It's not easy, but I do feel, because I can remember when I was putting God first consistently in my not crazy season where I thought, I had to control everything. When I was doing really good with that, and I was waking up and I was reading my Bible and I was journaling and I was doing that consistently, literally, like, everything else was good. My fitness was good. My eating was good. My stress levels were good. My relationships were good. Everything was good when I was doing that. And I'm like, why am I not doing that every day? Like, what is wrong with me? But we get caught up.
Yeah. And you can't segment those parts of who you are, because you are your body, soul, spirit. Yeah. So when you feed your spirit, your body and your soul benefit. Yeah. So you know what I mean? So it's not a separate, like, and you know what, honestly, when you feed your body properly, your spirit benefits too. You know what I mean? Right. So it's all connected, intertwined. It is all intertwined. Yeah. And so when people try to segment it and try to make them separate things, that's not even how we're created. Like, we are all very integrated, those three things. So it doesn't surprise me that you feel like your workouts get better when you get up to pray. Like, it doesn't make logical sense, but it's absolutely truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to talk to you all night, but we got
I know.
things to do.
We sent our families out.
I know.
Our families are not present. I think my husband's car is in the driveway, and they're like
probably
sitting in the
sitting
car.
there. Yeah,
It's like 100 degrees outside.
Us too.
I know, it's so hot. My kids are probably like, "Mommy, let us in."
They're probably peeking through the windows like, is she done yet? That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is real life behind the scenes. See, we're
Absolutely.
not gonna, I mean, sometimes when I'm talking to my people, I do the same thing. Like, I'll show them the whole thing. I'm like, okay, this is what you can see the candle, but then you look at my kitchen, it's like a mess, you know what I mean? Like, so you just gotta, we don't want anyone to feel, like we're so great. We're hashtag goals.
Oh, heck no. We're so not.
No, we're so not. Oh, it's so funny.
Cool. Well, you know what? Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you? And if you, I'm assuming you have your book up on Amazon or something, or
I do.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So then what I'll do is link that in the show notes. But why don't you just tell everybody where they can find you and follow you and not compare themselves to you?
Don't compare yourself to me. Please don't. I'm really good about throwing myself under the bus, so it won't be long. You'll be like, oh, wait, she's not all that.
Me too.
Okay. So yes, my blog is probably the place where you can find me most, like a lot of stuff. I have 10 years of posts in there, and that's the thescooponbalance.com is the name of the blog. And then I'm the Scoop on Balance on all social media. So probably the one I'm most active on would be Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I'm kind of newish to Instagram. So if people follow me there, they'll more see pictures of my kids and stuff. Twitter, I hate it. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see nothing. So don't worry about that. But Pinterest, I'm on there too. And then I created a quiz on my blog. And it's to find out what your busy type, like what's your busy personality. And it helps you get to the root of if you're feeling frazzled and like overly busy, you can take, it's just 7 questions. And then it'll help you unpack like what makes you too busy. Is it comparison? Is it perfectionism? Is it people pleasing? Is it that you just don't know your priorities? It'll help you get to the root of that. And then you can get a little more information on like what to do. So
that sounds good. I need to take that quiz.
So if you just go to thescooponbalance.com, the pop-up will come. And I hate pop-ups, but it's the only way I could figure out how to do it.
I mean, sometimes they're like super effective. So
yes. Well, hopefully this one will be, because I usually click off of them, but now I have one. So
now you give it a second thought.
That's right. So yes, those are all the places.
Yes, cool. And thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for just taking your time and like just hanging out and giving all these knowledge bombs to the listeners, because you never know. I'm sure people's lives are changing now from everything that you said.
Well, thank you for your podcast, and thanks for having me. It was so fun.
No problem. All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.